Hey, welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name is Grant, and you might notice Alexander is not with me today because I just got back literally about an hour ago, just got back from the World Board Gaming Championships in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. This is an annual convention held usually that last week and a half of July, sometimes spilling into August. I think next year it does spill into August. But it's a fantastic convention where people come together. Alexander and I look forward to it every year. This year, unfortunately, he had a family event, or fortunately, he got to travel back to England with his eldest son, Atticus, to visit with family for about a week and a half, I think 8 or 10 days. So he was unable to attend. I was actually considering not going, which is very, very rare for us. In fact, we've been to every single WBC since 2018, except for the one that was canceled in 2020. But love going every year, look forward to it. We usually go on a Tuesday and spend through Sunday, coming home on Sunday. So we normally get 3 to 4 days at the convention. This year, I actually only got 3.5 days. I didn't leave until Wednesday morning. Normally, we leave on Tuesday morning. Part of the reason for that is I decided late to go. We had planned not to go because Alexander knew he was going to England in early in the year, like in January. Normally we book our rooms in January and get that all set up. And if you know anything about the place, not a lot of hotels around it. The couple of hotels and condos kind of book out pretty quick because there's 2,500 to 3,000 people that come over the week. Almost 10 days of the convention. So it's hard to get a room if you haven't registered, pre-registered, and gotten that, you're gonna have trouble getting it unless you hook it up in January and February. So because I wasn't gonna go, didn't register till late and didn't make plans until late. But I was able to stay with some other people in a condominium. I ended up sleeping on a mattress. I'm an air mattress on the ground. I'm very appreciative to them allowing me to do that. I kind of stayed out of the way, and frankly, I left the condo every morning by 7 a.m. and didn't return till 10:30 or 11 every single night. And that's pretty typical for WBC. You go to play games, to talk to designers. We go to do interviews and take a look at prototypes. It's a bonanza, frankly. It's one of those places that you can't throw a stone 5 feet without hitting a designer or an aspiring designer or someone who has a prototype they're showing off or an upcoming game. There's also tons of other games that are demoed. GMT had games there demoing. Blue Panther had games there demoing. Multiman Publishing had games there demoing. There also were, I'm trying to remember who else. Fritz Bronner is doing a kind of an updated version of the classic 1989 game, Liftoff. It's called Liftoff 2.0, a space race, Cold War space race game. He's doing a Kickstarter for the later, and he was there. A couple of other people with smaller games were there. But then there's this huge open area where you can just play games. You can set up games on Geek List or with friends. You can do pickup games. And in addition to that, there are competitive events. There's probably a couple hundred different events or games that are being played. Everything from Panzer, MBT, Here I Stand, Border Ravers, other games as well, Multiman Publishing games, Euro games, board games, traditional board games, things like B-17 Queen of the Skies. They have like not a tournament, but like a week-long play session, because that's a solitaire game. Week-long play session where they get together and kind of do a narrative AAR discussion after each day. I've always wanted to attend that, but never have gotten necessarily around to that. Then there's a vendor hall that there's about half a dozen vendors. MMP, Academy Games, Worthington, VUCA Simulations was there this year, the German publisher. Blue Panther's there, GMT is there, Flying Pig Games is there, and a couple of others that were selling older games, as well as someone that was selling handmade dice towers, dice trays, and other gaming kind of aids and materials. So bunch of offerings there. And then in addition to that, there are seminars that you can attend. Now, I didn't attend any seminars. I didn't play in any competitive events. I go to play games. I go to talk to designers, to shoot interviews. Over the 3.5 days, I think I ended up doing 7 different interviews. I'll go over those very quickly. 7 interviews, I ended up playing 10 different games. Some of those were the designers' games that I played at the table, and then we would shoot a video, talk about it, and then shoot a video interview discussing it. So very busy 3.5 days. As I said, I would leave the condo by 7-ish and get home at 11:30. I never got to bed before 12:45 or 1, and then typically got up at 6 to 6:15 to get ready and get over to the convention center. The Seven Springs Hotel, Slopeside Hotel, I think is what it's called. Really good accommodations. The rooms are big. They have 2 or 3 different restaurants. They're not great restaurants, I'm just going to be honest. But the food is hot, and you can get it a little overpriced, but you're kind of a captive market. There's no McDonald's across the street. But that's kind of a rundown on what the World Board Gaming Championships is. It is an organization that is a membership organization, has been around for a long, long time. The Board Game Players Association, BPA, I think is their acronym. I'm a member of that. Alexander's a member of that. We've been a member since 2018. There are dues, and then you register for the conference. And that's how they run this conference and pay for the things that they need to pay for. Very cool event. We love going. I always have a blast. I'm exhausted. It's about a 6.5-hour drive for us, but it's fun. And we look forward to it every year. I'm very sad that Alexander didn't go this year. I missed him, frankly. He is the audio tech visual guy with the camera, the mics, the other things, the batteries. I'm just the guy that sits down next to him and says, I'm Grant. You know that, right? You know the routine. But this year I had to take a crash course in the camera to understand how to set it up, get it ready, charge and recharge, do the SD cards, store the videos. I had to do it all. I had to run it all. And it was concerning at first. By the end of the week though, I'm not gonna say I was a pro at it, but I was much, much better at it. So I learned. But had a blast. I want to talk about some of the things I did. Let's go over my schedule first. One thing on the way out, and you may or may not be able to see this list, it's pretty small. But on the way out, as you know, we try to do these car videos. And normally it's Alexander and I, but I wanted to do a car video. One of the problems we have with the car videos is you got to keep them to about 20 to 25 minutes because the camera is on a suction cup that goes up on the windshield and points towards us. And with the sun being in the summer, that windshield heats up and that camera kind of works pretty hard. And ultimately it will warn you, hey, it's going to cut off, and then it will ultimately shut down. So I knew I had about 20 to 25 minutes, but I tried to cover this list of some of my favorite war game series that are solitaire. So I talked about games that I play solo, a whole bunch of them. I got about half that video done, about halfway down that list, and that camera overheated and shut down. Now, that means what I recorded was lost. Anytime it kind of shuts off because of that, it will not retain what was shot. So I lost it, but I've still got the list. I'm gonna plan on probably doing a video just at my home, sitting here with some of those games to show you like we normally do. But that was kind of unfortunate, but it happens. And it actually got me a little more comfortable with the camera work as I was trying to do that. But on Tuesday, and let me go ahead and just flip my my schedule. I have a schedule, and then I have a list of the games that we played. So on the 24th, met up with Greg Smith at about 12:30. We talked about a whole bunch of his designs, upcoming stuff. I ended up playing Sinking Yamato, which is a solitaire war game on the last cruise of the super battleship Yamato, which is with the Japanese Navy during World War II. This was in 1945. I want to say it was May 7th, 1945. The Yamato was trying to go towards Okinawa as the Americans were attacking, and their goal was to beach themselves and basically become a immobile defense with flak and their big guns. and they never made it. They ended up ultimately getting attacked by almost 400 American aircraft, dive bombed, torpedoed, and strafed, and ultimately ended up going down. But that game covered that, and it's a solitaire game, plays in about 30 to 40 minutes, and it is extremely challenging. Greg did a lot of work to make it historically accurate, so he kind of vetted out the waves, how many aircraft were in each, and that determines some of the roles and the modifiers that they get. But you are trying, your decisions are where to put your crew. As your guns get destroyed and damaged, you have to decide where you're going to focus turning your guns, particularly your big guns. And then you also have damaged crews underneath, below deck, who are controlling flooding and fires, and it's just crazy. I think I ended up getting sunk like in the middle of turn 5, I think it was, out of about 10 turns. I was doing well for a while, and then it all just went to hell in a handbasket. But that game is coming out in Paper Wars issue number 112 from Compass Games, probably over the next 6 or 8 months. Greg said the work is done, and they are finalizing everything. But it was fun. It was unique and interesting. I also got a look at several of his other games, some that I've seen before, but Panzer Leader was another new one. That's in his Ace, or not Panzer Leader, Panzer Ace. That's in his Aces series. He's done all different types of those. Most recently, he's done American Tank Ace, and before that, or coming up, is British Tank Ace. So now this one is Panzer Tank Ace. He's also working on a Soviet version, T-34 Ace, I think is what it's called. But a cool narrative-driven solitaire game, very similar to Night Fighter Ace, or even the Hunters, or the Hunted, or Silent Victory. Obviously not in a sub, but some of the same mechanics. You're using charts, you're rolling die, checking things. You have crew that have different skills and abilities. Some are veterans, some are rookies, some are medium, and they offer different alternatives and modifiers. So I got to look at that, looking really good. Also got to look at his upcoming game in the Tide series called Insurgent Tide. That is the Pacific Tide, Imperial Tide, Ostkrieg, and Rebel Tide, which is his ACW title that's not out yet. But cool card-assisted design. I got to look at that, and it looks great. Some of that information is on the blog. I wrote a little post about the first day. You can check that out. But one of the more exciting things that I got to look at was, and I don't know if you can see that, this is the rules for Carrier Ace. So Carrier Ace, U.S. aircraft carrier operations in the Pacific, 1942 to 1945. So this is one of those Ace series games, but you are a pilot on a carrier. You can be assigned to different areas. You can end up ultimately fighting in different parts of the Pacific. You can also participate in all 5 of the major carrier battles like Midway, Santa Cruz, Coral Sea, the big 5. And you can play as a torpedo bomber, a bomber, or a fighter aircraft, all carrier-based. So you guys know those SBDs and TBFs and those kind of things. Corsairs are in it, and I can't remember, F4Fs and F6Fs, or 6F, yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, Wildcats. Very cool looking game, just like some of his other games, but Greg actually loaned me a prototype copy, so I'm gonna try to play it over the next couple of months and then mail it back to him. But I like anything in the Pacific. I also like air naval games, and I was very much excited by that. We spoke for about an hour. We shot a video. He had to leave. Then I was fortunate enough, working with Mark Miklos, I got an opportunity to meet with Bruno Sinigaglio and Dave Stifler. Bruno is the designer of the upcoming small BOAR Battles of the American Revolution series game Cowpens. I sat down with Dave, who is his developer and a real devotee of that system. Talked to them about the upcoming Cowpens and how it's different from the Battles of the American Revolution series. Really, it's a scale thing for the most part, but they also added some other things in that are unique, and You're talking about 30, 40 counters, smaller. The scale is like each counter represents 2 or 3 soldiers. 1/8, basically everything is 1/8. I think hexes are like 25 yards. So you have, one of the big changes, and that's about all I'll say about it, is normally you have rifle fire in BOAR, and then musket fire is kind of abstracted into close combat. In this one, you actually have rifle fire and musket fire. Because of the scale, it allows for that. So really great looking game, very much excited about that. The Battle of Cowpens in the American Revolutionary War was very key in the South. In 1781, the Southern Theater, Daniel Morgan led the colonials to victory that day, and it began the downfall of the British there in the South. So got to look at that game, very, very cool. After that, went to dinner, and then ended up playing a 4-player game of Pericles from GMT Games with Mark Herman, who was in attendance. If you know anything, Alexander and I both love Pericles. It's one of my favorite games, one of my favorites from Mark. It's just fun. It melts my brain, and I'm not very good at it, but that doesn't matter. I enjoy it. It's in that Great Statesman series where you're negotiating and arguing over issues, and then you're taking those issues and playing them out on the strategic board that shows basically the theater for the Peloponnesian War. Very cool game. We played, I want to say a 4 or 5 turn scenario. I can't remember the name of the scenario. Mark read it and I can't remember. But had a blast. When we finally wrapped it up, it was obvious that while the Spartans were winning, which was us, it was obvious Mark had set himself up to really constrict us and probably destroy us in the Isthmus of Corinth, which is kind of in that central area. He had a ton of Navy and had built up a good size army, and it was going to get ugly. But had a blast, loved playing with him. And that was my first day. I went back and I wrote on my phone a summary of all the events of each day called the Daily Debrief series. So if you want to find that, read those. You can find those on the blog. There's one for day 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see everything with pictures and kind of mini session reports, but a discussion about what I did. So that was the end of day 1. It was very, very eventful. I think I went to bed at 1:30 that morning. So on Thursday the 25th, the morning dawned early. I had set up a game with Kevin McPartland. You guys know who Kevin is. He's done games like Conquest of Paradise, most recently Banish the Snakes and others, Maori, the Warriors of the Long White Cloud, which I own. But he has a new game called The Great Hunger, and many of you are going to be probably upset about this. It's a game, a historical game that covers the potato famine in Ireland. It is a very interesting game that takes a look at the causes, the conditions, what the Irish were trying to do both before and after. It's really fascinating. Kind of an area control style game as you're trying to move into farmland to farm. And then as the potato blight comes, you are trying to leave, go to America, get jobs in local factories or on English estates. One of the interesting things is I think Kevin did a lot of research and showed how the English estates and the practice of buying up farmland and relocating the Irish farmers really led to a lot of the difficulty. But that element is in the game, and you can somewhat fight that, but you can also work with the English to gain employment, which is going to allow you to survive. Very interesting game, unique, a little somber, but I thought it played very well. I shot an interview with Kevin on that. Next, I met with a newer designer, Damien Mastrangelo, and Damien designed a Robin Hood game for Worthington about 5-6 years ago. But I got to look at 2 of his games, but the first game that I got to look at was called 18 Card Napoleonics. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. There were 18 cards in the game, the French versus the Prussians or the British, if you're at Waterloo, or the coalition forces. You take cards to activate units who are going to attack. They are counters that act like blocks. So when you take a hit, you have to rotate it. And as you get down to no health, you're going to expire and be removed from the board. You have to take out 2 of the 3 columns worth of soldiers to win the game. Your activations have symbols that match your unit type: cavalry, artillery, and infantry. And your cards have activation symbols, so when you draw those cards, if you don't have those symbols, you can't activate those units. Very unique, very interesting. There are kind of little event elements on there, and the cards are also used in a resolution deck to resolve everything: combat, movement, rally attempts. And as you draw those cards out, you're looking for numbers that are higher than your value printed on the calendar, ranging from 1 all the way up to 4. 4 will be very hard to get because the values of the cards in the deck are 0 to 4. So more often than not, you're going to pull 0s and 1s and fail. Each player has 5 cards. So out of 18 cards, each player has 10 cards in their hand. There's only 8 cards in the deck. So it's funny, you look at your cards and you're like, oh, I have a 4, a 3, and a 2 with 2 zeros. I know there's not a lot of good cards in that resolution deck, so what do I want to do? Very fun and interesting. That game has been picked up by Worthington, and they are going to work towards publishing that. But that was very fun. And he's a sharp guy who I think has a bright future. Then I met back up with Kevin McPartland. We played a 4-player game of Maori, Warriors of the Long White Cloud. It is about clan warfare in New Zealand in around the 1400s, 1500s. Interesting game, a little combat heavy. You're trying to take over areas, develop your infrastructure, villages, pause, build war canoes, build troops, and gain victory points. Pretty interesting game, very much enjoyed that. We then went to dinner, and then I met up with Patrick and Julius from VUCA, and we played their upcoming game called New Cold War. New Cold War is a very cool game. Think Twilight Struggle, but for 4 players. So it literally is, and it's more modern, 1989 to basically today. And the different factions are obviously Russia and the United States, but also the Chinese and the European Union. And you're working together with your teammate, EU and US I was with, against the Chinese and the Russians. You're vying for control of continents and regions to score points. You have objectives that you can meet. There is combat in the regard of you attempt coups by taking their influence down and taking it over. That's going to gain you VP. All kinds of cool events. You have a social media track and news media track that you're trying to manipulate. We very much enjoyed that. I had a great time with that one. I'm very much looking forward to that. They think that will be out sometime in early 2025. So definitely keep an eye out for that. The last game that I did that day was The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. This one's designed by Wes Crawford and is going to be published by Blue Panther Games. It is a solitaire, but you can also do cooperative and you can do competitive. They're working on a competitive mode. Very interesting game where you're literally looking for clues in Washington, D.C. with your agents and your police, trying to draw clue tokens out of a bag to meet the objectives of each of the clues so that you can understand where John Wilkes has secreted himself off to. Played in about 45 minutes with a 15-minute teach. I very much enjoyed it. I played solo with Wes kind of GMing that. That's going to come out later this year, I think, probably in the late fall, but they are still working on some aspects of that. Very much enjoyed that. You're going to like that one. We did a video interview there, and then that was the end of my second day. Had a blast. By that time, I was getting pretty tired. On Friday the 26th, we started a huge 6-player game of Here I Stand at 9 a.m. We played from 9 to 4 with about a 30-minute lunch break in the middle. I played as England, and ultimately I ended up winning. At the end of turn 4, I had 26 victory points, I think, and you might be sitting there going, what? I've never won with the English. I've never played a game where the English won, but I won because early on I was able to get an heir, Edward. Edward was born. He was sickly, but I got my victory points from that. I also had a lot of luck in the New World. I founded 2 colonies and got multiple VP from that. I got into some combats with the French, who had been repulsed in northern Italy and in Spain by the Habsburgs. So I kind of picked up the pieces, and I took, by the end of the game, I'd taken 4 different keys from him, but as you know, he'd sued for peace and I had to give those back. But I captured Francis I 2 different times. So I had to ransom him, gain victory points. So getting to 26 victory points was challenging, but I was able to do it. I couldn't believe it. Had a blast. I love Here I Stand. The game is never bad. Almost every game I played, it ends between round 4 and round 5. I know it goes to, I think, round 8, but I've never seen it go any further than that. But love an opportunity to play, especially a 6-player game of Here I Stand, always a blast. Then, after that, we played a game of Mare Nostrum. Mare Nostrum is from Academy Games. It's a light civ building war game because there's a lot of combat. It's about trading resources and developing your economy, purchasing heroes and wonders to ultimately meet your victory conditions. Everybody has the same victory conditions. It's just a fun game. It's fairly light. We played a 6-player game of that using the Atlantis expansion and had a ball. I was Carthage, adjacent to Egypt. Egypt ended up winning, but it wasn't for me not trying. I attacked him as much as I could, but had a blast with that. Then I was able to sit down with Fritz Bronner and discuss his upcoming 2nd edition of his original 1989 game called Liftoff. It's a Cold War space race game. Very cool looking cards. You're working on projects and technologies to build boosters and rockets and orbital shuttles, landing craft, so that you can get a man on the moon and gain VP prestige to win. You are competing against other players who control other space agencies, the USSR, and you are working back and forth. There's bad events that happen. Everything comes down to a die roll of a percentile, but you can modify that based on different research and how fast you're pushing projects and what you are doing. It looks really cool. The production value of this one looks significantly better than it did in 1989, as you would imagine. That one is going to come to Kickstarter by the end of the year, and I would recommend you check that out. They are on X. Fritz Bronner looks really good. I'm going to do an interview with him, and then we did a video interview that day. Game looks really good. So that was the end of Friday. So here we are on the, basically the last day, which was Saturday. I was exhausted, but on Saturday, my day started off with a chance meeting with Mark Herman and Sal Vasta. Sal Vasta is the Unconditional Surrender from GMT Games designer. I was sitting in the cafe by myself because it was about 10 after 7. And I had bought a muffin and a Diet Pepsi, and I was sitting there, and Mark walked by, saw me, came in, grabbed a coffee, sat down and talked to me for about 20 minutes. Then Sal walked by to get coffee, came back and talked for another 10 minutes. We had some great discussions. One of the comments I would share with you was hilarious. If you know Mark Herman, Mark is one of those really intelligent, introspective, and insightful people. And he was schooling me on the geometry of formed lines in the American Civil War and how they were trying to get at each other, to attack the most firepower on the same or similar spots to weaken them, break a line, and then move through. I thought at one point, no joke, he was going to whip out a protractor and a calculator and calculate, but I had a blast with it. I learned a lot, and it was a great conversation. I also got a look at his new book, War Games According to Mark, that's coming out from GMT Games. It's beautiful. He had a bunch of notes in it. I kind of read that while he was getting his coffee, looked at it. It looks really good. Very much interested in that. Funny story. Before that, I went to get the table that we wanted, put a game there, and I put my tripod with our camera in the middle of the table. It's a pretty safe environment. I didn't think anything of it. So I went to get my muffin, talked to Mark and Sal, and then came back. Upon my arrival, my friends were setting up, they were setting up our game, Tim and Tom, and then Russ, you're going to kill me, Cullen. Cullen were setting up Hegemony. We were playing Hegemony from the Hegemonic Game Project. And all of a sudden I was like, where's my camera? Couldn't find my camera. I thought someone stole it. I was immediately sick to my stomach. This is a very nice camera with great mics, a great stand. It probably cost altogether $700 or $800, and we've paid for that over the past 3 or 4 years and use it all the time. It's very key to what we do. And I thought it was stolen. So I called security. Everybody started looking around. And finally, after about 30 minutes, one of the guys that was watching our game saw my camera stand sitting up kind of in the lost and found behind the front gaming area, which is a place I didn't even think they had a lost and found. But I saw it and I was so relieved they gave it to me. And I was able to then continue recording my remaining videos that day. Just a kind of a funny story. I should have known better that gamers aren't going to steal that, but it gave me a real heart attack, frankly. But we played Hegemony. It's about a 3-hour game. It's a asymmetric Euro-style worker placement game where everybody's working as a different class. We did a full review on the game. The game's fantastic. I played as the working class. Ultimately, I ended up winning. I think it was 78 victory points and had really gotten into some good strategies and milling VP, but had a blast. 11:30 came, we went to lunch, and then we came back to play a game of Arcs. Cullen and Russ played with me. They are two of our friends from Pittsburgh. And then a gentleman by the name of Jordan, who had played the game once and watched a dozen videos, he said, or claimed. And I believe him. There's no reason. But that guy was a savant, and I'm telling you, he buried us. He was kicking our teeth in. And that was my second play of it. And I'm going to be honest, I learned a lot from watching him dominate. And we all ganged up on him and ultimately slowed him down. But he pulled the victory out by the end. But great little game, Arcs from Leader Games, brand new off of Kickstarter. I have a copy. I took it with me and we played that copy. Beautiful game, but also very cool. Plays in about 2 hours with the teach. First play is going to be a little longer, but it's a very fun game. Had a blast with that. The final game of the night was a 5-player. We had one player that dropped out, Game of John Company, 2nd edition from Whirligig Games. Fantastic, negotiation heavy, working together to keep the East India Company solvent during colonial times. And I know that might be offensive to some people. I get it. The game is very interesting and unique. We played and we all pacted with each other. We had a pact, a blood oath, that we wanted to see the company succeeded because I had never seen it succeed. So we all agreed to succeed. We worked very well together. Everyone still did their thing to gain their VP, but we ultimately, the company survived. We did a 5-turn scenario. I ended up pulling the victory out. I think I got 24 VP. The next closest was like 20, I think it was. I retired 4 guys and had a couple of cards that gave me VP, and that's how. And then I had a lot of power at the end because I was prime minister, and a couple of my cards gave me, and I had 3 shipyards, and that was the highest on the power track. That gave me like 5 VP, but always a great experience. Had a blast. You're rolling a ton of dice to open markets or attack insurgents. And you have to roll 1s and 2s. You're rolling 3 to 5 dice, and sometimes you don't, and everybody's upset, and sometimes you do, and everybody says, and you're happy, and you gain things. But it's a great little game, very interesting. Cole Worley, I believe, is a genius, and that game is one of our favorites, and we love playing it. So that kind of ended my trip there and everything that I did. Now, I did want to talk about the vendor hall. As you can see, I've got some booty here. There's a vendor hall that has about 8 or 9 war game vendors, mostly. MMP is there, GMT is there, Flying Pig Games, VUCA Simulations was there this year, Blue Panther, Worthington, I'm probably missing someone. There's a couple of others that are selling older games. but they're all selling games, and by the end of like on Saturday when they close down, they're giving 15, 20% off, and you can get some real good deals. Now, I didn't get good deals on these. I had to buy because these were going to be bought out. But you can see my stack of MMP games here that I bought. Some were for Alexander. He gave me a list. The ones for Alexander are Thunder on the Mississippi, the newest game in the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War from MMP, GCACW. I also bought this game for him, which is a surprise. He did not ask for this, but this is to take Washington. And this is called the Line of Battle series, I believe. Line of Battle series. Very cool looking game. I'm very much excited about it. Alexander has really gotten into ACW, which I'm totally okay with. I also picked up Skirmisher number 3 and 4 for him. He'll be excited about that. But there's those. I picked up for myself, here's what I acquired for myself. I've wanted Storm over Stalingrad for a long time. It was $30, I picked it up. That Storm over series is very unique and interesting. I also got a new game in the Standard Combat series. This is number 19, Panzer Battles, 11th Panzer on the Cheer River. This is an East Front game. Very much looking forward to that. Love SCS, the Standard Combat series. And believe it or not, you may be surprised, I ended up buying ASL Starter Kit number 4, the Pacific, along with the ASL Starter Kit Expansion Pack number 2, which is the some additional units, but it also adds the Chinese and some other smaller factions. But I'm going to play this. I'm going to try to learn it myself and play it similar to Alexander, who played ASL Starter Kit 1. So this is where I'm going to start, so maybe this will take me down the rabbit hole. We will see, I'm not sure. But that was my haul from MMP. I also got Coral Sea Solitaire from Decision Games. Joseph Miranda, this is a solitaire game. I also bought Viva Mexico from White Dog Games at the Blue Panther booth. Dave Kershaw, this is the Mexican Revolution in 1910 to 1920, a solitaire game. That's going to fall over. And then a game that I've wanted since it came out about a month ago, Raider Drop Zone. This is designed by Keith Tracton, and it's basically Space Marines and space fighting with an alien Kraken. So it's just cool. So a solitaire, or not solitaire, a 2-player kind of tactical level war game. Very much excited about that. That one was a little bit expensive, but it's got a lot of content in it. I also purchased the upgraded special dice for A Most Fearful Sacrifice from Flying Pig Games. One of my favorite games. Those are beautiful dice. Also, I think I showed you this at the beginning, but I was given this Into the Whirlpool. I forgot. I ended up playing Into the Whirlpool on, I think it was Thursday. This is from Tattered Flags number 1. It's a redo of the series from Victory Point Games by Herman Lutman. The game was awesome. I played and really very much enjoyed it, had a good time. It's a great war game that has a real miniature style of feel. The only other thing I wanted to show you, but I'm not going to show you everything, but I got like 16 rule books signed by the likes of John Butterfield, Greg Smith, Scott Blanton, Storm Over Jerusalem, D-Day at Tarawa by Butterfield. I even got John Butterfield and Kai Jensen to sign Downfall's rulebook. Very much excited about that. I felt like a fanboy running around. I also got Mark Herman to sign 5 of my rulebooks, including Rebel Fury. I want to read this note to you. He says, Alexander, eat your heart out. So he signed Washington's War there for me. Very much enjoyed that. But Mark's a great guy. Also got Ben Hull to sign Banish All Their Fears from GMT Games. And Kevin McPartland signed Maori, Warriors of the Long White Cloud. So I got, a lot of rule books signed, and you might be saying, well, why are you doing that? But I like that. It's fun and unique. So I think that's my debrief. I'm exhausted. I had a blast. When I left at 5:15 this morning, I had nothing but smiles on my face because everything I did this week was fantastic, with the exception of not having along my compatriot, partner, friend, and brother-in-law, Alexander. So, but hey, WBC, if you ever want to go, do it. You can drive there depending on where you live. We drove 6.5 hours. Some people drive 1 to 3 hours, but it's worth it. So if you come, please say hello, get with us. We'll try to play a game, talk, get to know each other, and kind of go from there. Had a blast. 2024's WBC. I'm not glad it's over, but I am kind of glad it's over. I'm very, very tired. So thanks for watching this debrief. I've been Grant for the Players Aid.